Hi, this is Bob Samuels from Tech Connector. I'm happy to be here. I'm a seasoned B2B marketer and advisor. I've been in this business for over 20 years. Happy to introduce you to a great panel of marketers. I'd like everybody to introduce themselves and say a fun fact. Fun fact for me is I'm a big time pickleball enthusiast. That's my whole life right now, besides my new grandson. So that's the fun thing about me. Kevin, do you want to jump in?
Sure. So I'm Kevin Flint. I'm a B2B demand gen consultant and also a principal consultant at 10x4. We help pair up usually enterprise marketers with great agencies. And a fun fact about me is I was once on the security detail for a rapper named DMX for one day in the summer of 2001, which is very unlike anything people would expect from me. So that's my fun fact. Charlie, want to go next?
Sure. First, I just want to say I can't wait and look forward to playing pickleball with Bob. That's number one. Get that out of the way. And fun fact is I'm studying for my sommelier certification. I've been it's a bucket list thing. I won't do anything with it. I just want to prove I could do it. Only 50% of the people who take it actually pass. So the good news is I'm doing a lot of drinking, and the bad news is that 50% of the people fail. So we'll see how that comes out. Professionally, I built one of the first intent engines, the Big Willow. We sold that to Aberdeen. We sold that to Ziff Davis, and now I'm doing a very similar thing at Demand Science, which is a large content syndication and B2B data company based in Boston, and getting to do some exciting things. So looking forward to this, and want to thank Bob and Kevin for having us.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right, we'll pass the ball to Matt. Why don't you go next?
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Matthew Rhodes Brown, and I'm the CEO and founder of Account Media. We partner exclusively with publishers and demand providers to help maximize their revenue potential by providing scalable and precision demand generation services. This can come in the form of consultancy, in lead delivery, data, and software. A fun fact about me is that my uncle used to play professional football, that's soccer to our American audience, for Chelsea Football Club. So if we do have any Chelsea fans on the call, you may recognize my surname.
All right. Thank you, Matt. I'm going to tag in Ross next.
It's Leighton Orient all the way, tiny side in the middle of nowhere in London. Yeah, I'm Ross. I'm head of product at Inbox Insight. My role is to help customers accelerate their demand generation more efficiently and grow their businesses. I sit in the intersection between the market requirement and our digital marketing specialists and our data scientists and engineers, trying to connect what's the client problem to how do we leverage all this data and how we build our own gear that's going to help do that in innovative ways. My fun fact is I've got a 1.5-year-old, so I'm drinking probably as much as Charlie, but I'm not going to get a qualification.
It's the better way to do it.
All right, and Zach, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you having me, Bob. Appreciate the invite to be on the panel. So I'm Zach Jones, Chief Revenue Officer at Technology Advice. So Technology Advice is a full-service B2B media company. We're based in Nashville, Tennessee, but have a global presence in UK and Australia and Singapore. So we own and operate more than 20 digital media properties, including sites like Tech Republic, eWeek, and project-management.com. So through these sites and our email newsletters, as well as our phone conversations, we're able to connect tech marketers with around 100 million B2B buyers each year who are trusting us to help them make informed technology purchasing decisions. And offerings include custom content, advertising, lead generation, as well as buyer intent and intelligence. So interesting fact about me, when I was in college, I was actually the front man of a pop punk band. No, I will not share the name because I don't need anyone on this call Googling it or sending me pictures of me with long hair and skinny jeans because I did the whole 9 yards. So looking forward to being on the panel, and nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Zach. Well, I appreciate everybody being on today, and obviously all those that have joined us. I'm going to play the role of co-host with Bob today and try to guide this conversation. And at different times, I think, Bob, you'll be putting up some poll questions that we would love people to participate in, and we'll discuss some of those. But I think in terms of setting the stage here, we all are aware of some of the headwinds we're facing in the market, with economic uncertainties, with banking crises, with overall layoffs, and certainly plenty of bad news out there, that we're all facing with. At the same time, we all have to keep moving forward, and at the same time, our customers and our customers' customers are continuing to move forward and make purchase decisions. Their behaviors are changing, and so I think it's really important for us to to share some insights and best practices on what we're seeing and help each other, and of course our network of peers here navigate these times. So really a lot of the focus today is to try to put some actual some anchors on some of the discussion points that are out there, some of the hype, some of the discussion points, and see kind of what this esteemed panel has to say about it and what some of our folks in the audience have to say. And I think as a starting point, where I'd like to start with is just a few thoughts from everybody on some of the high level trends that you're seeing, in the market with your customers or with their customers, in terms of, budget trends or kind of what direction you see things going, just to kind of help set the stage, to get behind some of the hype and buzz. And so if I could start with you, Matt, maybe share a couple thoughts on just some of the trends you're seeing in your business right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you mentioned, it's important to acknowledge and recognize the challenging environment that technology marketers are currently finding themselves in. They are under more pressure than ever before to deliver results quicker, with less budget and less resources. And the backdrop to that is that their own customers have extended buying cycles. Projects have been put on pause, projects have been put on hold. And we're seeing a lot of marketers being a lot more hesitant around committing to long-term programs, choosing to commit really on a month-by-month basis or a quarterly basis, and then optimizing as the campaign continues. The strong message we're hearing as well is quality over quantity. Data integrity, authentic engagement, and data quality, are essential for the lead generation success. We're also seeing a significant increase in clients requesting additional insights into the prospects and leads we're delivering to them. So qualifying questions and profiling questions are becoming much more common. And on the enrichment side, clients want to know more and understand more about their prospects. We're having a lot of requests for clients to have leads enriched with intent data, with technographic late data. I think some of our marketing customers, if they had the choice, they would like to understand if their prospect decides likes Diet Coke or Pepsi more. And that may sound crazy now, but the way that data is going, and the way that the data evolution is currently in progress, and that may be a reality at some point in the future. I'd love to hear what others have to say.
Yeah, Charlie, what say you? What are you seeing? Do you validate some of those things?
And I'm gonna jump in and share the poll.
Oh, sure.
And then we can keep going, and I'll just let people chime in on the poll, and we can talk about the results after. Go ahead, Charlie. Sorry.
No, that's fine. The points that Matt are making are really good. I can't tell you how many, I think there's a message and a lesson for both sides of the equation, from the sellers and the buyers, right? On the seller side, it's time to recognize a lot of what Matt said and really spend your time on the next generation of things that have to be done. I call this this is the new age of invisible tech. And what I mean is that there's got to be a lot of stuff that's going on that you don't have to present in a dashboard, right? How many demos have I seen in the last year? And when everything's important, nothing's important. Vendors stop showing stuff and start doing. My new t-shirt is activation, not presentation, right? And that goes to exactly what Matt's talking about. Matt's talking about data integrity. So how many, if you, listen, I've spent about 3 or 4 months going through G2, Capterra, and Trust Radius, and I think it's a really good exercise for everyone to do. Look at what people dislike, right? It's enough to have an end user be happy. Look at what they dislike. Data integrity has a problem, too many manual processes, not enough coverage, so on and so forth. just go and do it. I've spent time looking at 1,500 different reviews across the board. They all say the same thing. So what other message do we as sellers have not to sort of take the next step? Invisible tech is get things to work and do the client's job for them. 50% of what you're looking for as a renewal goes away when you're asking people to do too much. And then on the buyer side, demand the things that Matt just talked about or I just talked about, and let's get this thing going. We're all hurting ourselves because there's not enough automation. Everybody talks about AI, and I'm going to get to that later. But get the little things right first. All right, just do the little things. They add up.
Yeah. So I think so far what we're discussing here is going to be trying to actually pull more value out of the activities that we're doing, try to bring more relevance to the business from all the things we're doing from a data perspective, from an insights perspective. Ross, what say you? What do you have to add to this?
I want that T-shirt. That's what.
So you got it. You're in.
I think that's I've got one to add to it though. So that I think it's the reason that they are defaulting to presentation is they need justification, right? Yeah. Because the macro is getting harder, to Matt's point. So everybody's thinking, well, if I can just get enough stats to show my boss, then maybe it'll look like I didn't waste my budget, and I'll feel safer in terms of the commitments that I've made. That I've made the right decisions. I'm going to deliver pipeline. Everyone's going to be happy with me, right? But that the level of trust in you to do the activation is seen as coming hand in hand with that level of justification. And by trying to place screens in front of the client that gives them that data, that's definitely a factor. But I was having a conversation with one of my team yesterday where I was like, just tell them the information. Like the dashboard that we produce is great, but they also want the 6 hours back that they need to spend reading it, and you spend all day doing this. So tell them. And I think that, if our job on the seller side is to provide them that value faster and that insight faster, the core need that they have, the emotional need as a buyer is justification that they've made the right choices, and then eventually for that to bear fruit down the line in the ROI figures.
Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I mirror a lot of the same sentiments that the group has shared. But going back to the original question, what trends are we seeing on budgets? Marketers are going back to what they know works. Lead guarantees, channels that they have seen produce pipeline, and they can point to say this budget has attributed this amount of ROI or return on ad spend. We don't see a lot of experimenting right now, and so it goes back to what programs can we put together that are going to help play into their already established go-to-market motions that they understand how to run. So something that's a little more turnkey can be bought on a quarterly basis as opposed to a year-long deal. Although we are seeing some customers who are excited about year-long deals, especially if it is working, it's something they can lock in and see the value of that. So things are I'm optimistic about where we're headed in the back half of the year, but just being mindful that we have to produce results even more so than what we were doing in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, and that definitely resonates with me in my practice and working with a lot of, marketing teams. I've definitely seen where it feels like the time has finally come when everybody's being required to show results based on business outcomes. It's been threatened for 15, 20 years that I've been doing this. And, I'm seeing a lot of CFOs involved in a lot more stages of many conversations and saying, hey, it's your budget if you can keep it. And really, kind of tearing down some of that marketing and sales black box of, well, I can't explain these metrics right now, but the arrows go up, so it's all going well, right? I think there's a lot of pressure right now to actually tell the business, what are you doing with these dollars? What does it actually turn it into? And for everybody in this ecosystem to be able to provide those insights in a way, to the earlier point, which is don't show me a dashboard I have to scroll through for 15 minutes. Tell me, if dollar A goes in, what happens at the bottom? Where can we find efficiency? Where can we find improvements? And ultimately, it's not a bad thing, but it's definitely something that I think is a challenge we're all facing.
And as a provider, and if there's any marketers who are working with providers like the ones on this call, give us that data. I mean, that's something that has been historically very difficult to get back from vendors for whatever reason. Maybe there's a fear of not looking smart or having the data, but whatever KPI is important to you and how you're measuring the success of the vendors you're working with, if you can share even down to a click ID or a lead ID, that allows us to go back and see what channel did we use, what worked, what didn't work, and optimize the program. And I think oftentimes there's a fear of, well, if I share this, what are you actually going to go do differently? It feels like maybe I'm showing my hand, but
Yeah.
we really are able to optimize the channels, especially when you think about large publishers who have different sites and different email newsletters and audiences they're reaching. It's really helpful for us to drive better results.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would agree with Zach. The more feedback we could get from our customers about what's working and what's not working, the better. We can look at, the strategies that we've got in play, look at what content's performing, look at what subject titles are performing well. We have seen, I would say, that since the start of the year, we have seen a lot more sort of feedback from our customers. We've had a lot of really good feedback since the beginning of the year, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, the more feedback we can get from our customers, the better we can do as a publishing community.
A question I have for this group would be, and I've certainly faced this for years, but in the cases where you don't get that feedback loop, what are a couple of the reasons typically why? Is it lack of resources on the client side to actually enable it? Is it security and data privacy? Is it, what are some of the common themes that maybe the people on this call or that are watching this are going through?
I think it's the former, Kevin, and it goes back to my original statement, which is we as sellers have to do more for clients. Unless you get into the ultra enterprise where they have data science groups and they have large enterprise marketing operations and so on and so forth, there's just not enough to go around. I really think we've hit what I call peak insourcing, where we've reached the edge of how many people do people need inside of their organizations to basically do manual labor, as opposed to where are the strategic organizations that are more focused on the strategy and letting their sellers do more of that stuff for them. I think that's where it's got to go, because we're running out of people. There's only so much talent. Everybody can't have 8 geniuses running around the Marketo whiz-bang or HubSpot or whatever. It's really, that's the biggest problem. It's not privacy. And I think with Zach is right. The more data you can put together for a client, the more sources that you have, the more data types you have, the better the result is going to be. So I don't think it's that. I think it's more, if you go to a client, what do they do all day? They're in meetings. Everybody's in meetings. When does the work get done? It's sort of, we have to solve that problem for everybody. It's not a knock on clients. Clients are trying to do the best they can, but nobody has the answer. If we would have already known, if somebody already had the answer. We have to get better at automating process and workflow. They've been doing it for 30 years on the supply side. What's the problem on the demand side? What's the difference? There is no difference. Robotic process and manipulation of data has been going on in insurance companies and banks and so for years. We're still not there. We're still like that game Mousetrap, I don't know if I'm dating myself, but, eventually, the mouse gets caught in the cage with the cheese and all. It's too Rube Goldbergian, and we got to get better at that.
Well, certainly, I think efficiency and efficacy are needed right now. And there's a lot of, I think, built up just process inefficiencies in many cases, as we've thrown technology and people at problems, but not always in the right measure or in the right organization, where a lot of what has been built over the past 10 or 15 years now is actually a great time to rehash some of that and build an operation that's much more orchestrated, even if not fully automated. A lot of the things that we do every day, if the data is flowing correctly, the decisions are much easier to make, the insights are easier to grab. I saw a data point the other day about how siloed data is from customer data. And the amount of organizations, enterprises that actually share customer data across different divisions or different groups is remarkably low. And so I just think, one of the things that I tell clients all the time is, fundamentally, before looking at new tech or new people or anything like that, is let's look at where do we have inefficiencies and gaps in our process. And if there's value being lost because someone doesn't know to send it somewhere or it's manually being done, how do we break that down? You could have, I used to say, in the media planning world, I could have the best media plan in the world, but once I've done my job, there's a lot that has to go on. And if those processes and things don't make sense, things can break down. we're talking a lot, obviously, about, I think, fundamentals right now, right? And some of the basic building blocks of success. At the same time, we're at the start, really, or the restart of a massive hype cycle and around AI. And I think about a few years ago, I think my toaster had Watson. Everything was Watson, Watson, Watson. And then, of course, the shiny object shifts a little bit. And now we've got ChatGPT, we've got Bing, and I'm sure we're all either being compelled to talk about it or ask clients about it or what have you. I'm just curious about, from your all's perspective, how this whole conversation around AI is starting to make its way into your businesses. Is it something that, you've got products utilizing it, or you're trying to figure that out? I guess, where are you at in that, and kind of how are you responding to all that, I think, influx of buzz that's happening in terms of, what does this mean? What are we going to do about it? I just would love, initial takes from everybody. And maybe I'll start with you, Ross.
Yeah, and before we jump into AI, let me just share the poll.
All right.
The last poll, and then I'll get into some AI polls. So the last poll talked about, what are the big demands that are being thrown at us as solution providers. And I don't know if there's any big surprises here. So AI is on there. It probably never was on there. If we did this last year or 6 months ago, I don't think that would have shown up. But intent signals is always a big thing, Charlie. Multi-touch, multi-outreach seems to be a big thing. And then ABM is still strong. Any questions or thoughts about any of that? Does it surprise you?
Not at all.
To me, I mean, it's definitely what I'm hearing about every day, but I'm a third party to this whole thing versus what you guys deal with every day.
Yeah.
On the issue, first of all, I think to unwind some of the, Ross, go ahead. I got ahead of you. Ross, why don't you go?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you say that AI wouldn't have been in the survey nowadays. I think that the hype has reached us, but the technology sets that have been available to build on have been around a little while. But I think the prominence in the mainstream and in business to consumer is going to increasingly affect people within organizations being asked, are they using this, which is going to make them feel like they should use it. So there's going to be an element of customers being led by the discourse. I'm not going to put intellectual property out there, I'll get my knuckles wrapped, but we have a few ways of using AI inbox. It's been about a 3-4 year journey for us. We use a combination of machine learning for creating decisions around lead quality, but parking that to the side and more around like what's hype at the moment with GPT. We have technology sets and partners around natural language processing and natural language generation. And what I think we're going to see is that those two things are the two sides of the same coin, right? It can pull down content from, we're probably quite a favorite Bombora, right? We've been reading content in this industry for a long time and then trying to make decisions on what we're going to do with the keywords and engrams that we find there. And then intent, I mean, Charlie, I'm preaching to the choir here, Big Willow. But then in terms of the other side of that, okay, so how do I now generate valuable content against the information that I've just received or against the stimulus that's out there in the market? But in something as complex as B2B technology, how do I make it not rubbish, right? So if the technology is now catching up with us to a level where GPT-4 is able to pass the bar exam and populate hundreds of medical diaries off a single prompt, right? The tech's not the problem anymore. Asking it the right questions is the problem. So within our data science team, we're in a real deep testing phase at the moment of understanding how does a market obsessed with keywords and obsessed with intent topics understand the context of those topics and then produce relevant content or get enough from those stimuluses to make relevant matches. So read the content, writing content, that they're a mirror of each other. And I think what we need to do as partners to that is, as we've just said, it's not the client's problem, it should be our problem, right? It's our job to specialize and to serve them so they can spend their time growing their actual business, supporting their sales teams, reaching their go-to-market potential. And to do that, they tap into our toys.
Nice. I think that Ross hit everything on the head. that I would touch. But let's be clear about this stuff. First of all, everyone knows the distinction between generative and non-generative AI. The generative piece is great because it's bringing to the masses stuff that we never had before. But I just want to talk about AI. Generative AI has a place in our firmament. I think Russ did a good job of talking about content and how to get the right content in front of the right people. But again, I want to go back to fundamentals, right? If we're doing too many things on a manual basis, how the heck are we going to get to AI if we can't do the simple stuff, right? Now, I'll just give you an example. I have close to 15 people on a data engineering, data science team, right? And we started with 6 models against the AI. We took about a year and we're down to 2 models, and it took us about 6 months to train the 2 models. So let's go through that. And Russ probably knows this, and anybody that has a data science team knows this. You're going to take 10 months to a year to come to a conclusion using AI, and then you're going to take another 4 to 6 months to train data. So what does that mean? It means that most of the people are not going to do it because there's too much resource involved, and they don't want to put the resource into it. So be very careful when people say, oh yeah, we use AI and we're AI this and we're AI that. There are some really good companies out here that are doing it, that are fulfilling the promise. They really are. Most of it is the hype cycle, though. Is like, I talked to a guy and he said, yeah, I'm starting to build lead gen sites. And I'm asking ChatGPT to write the content for me. And I'm like, brilliant. If it works, that's pretty crazy, right? Zach's saying, geez, is that right? Because by the way, Zach's properties are just amazingly good. They really are. And you're never going to get there with ChatGPT. You're just not ever. But let me go back to the point. It's like Jack Nicholson and the Witches of Eastwick. I just want somebody to iron my shirts. I mean, that's kind of how I feel clients feel. It's just like, can somebody just do the simple things for me? This AI stuff sounds interesting, but it's a lot of hype. And it takes a lot, guys, I'm telling you, it takes a lot of work, and you have to commit to it, and you have to have the people to do it. That's all.
Yeah, jumping on the back of that, it's great to hear you both. We also implement some AI within our business around our lead qualification and lead verification systems. But on a practical level with ChatGPT, it's been really exciting in the business to learn and explore it. I think it really plays into the new way that we communicate with each other. During COVID, we stopped picking up the phone and sending emails, and we were communicating through instant messaging all the time. And when you go onto ChatGPT, it is like being on Teams, or it's like being on Slack. I am guilty of saying hello and please and thank you to ChatGPT at times, because it does sometimes feel like you're speaking to an actual human. And sometimes it's friendlier than some of the humans that I work with. On a practical level, we've done some really interesting things. So our sales director, he was tasked with a brief from a customer who was looking for US-based architecture and engineering companies of over 200 employees, specializing in high-value upmarket residential property development. And he asked ChatGPT to put together a target account list of those companies, and was able to bring up a list of 200 companies. Previously the business were using SIC codes or NAICS codes for targeting. So that's been a really interesting part. Our VP of operations, one of the common challenges on a operational level for publishers like me is company name to domain resolution, trying to get that perfect match. We've been entering company names into ChatGPT, and it's been converting it into company domains. So we're able to cross-reference that data with our audience to execute on activity. And again, another level, Natasha in our marketing team, she did a trial of, she translated a Gartner white paper using ChatGPT into 8 different languages, and she distributed that to 8 native speakers, and all of them came back and said, it's word perfect. Now that also hopefully brings potential for the future for our industry in the demand gen, that some of our technology vendors that are in the space using English content will have a cost-effective, quick way to translate their content into native language. So that's really exciting. I'd love to hear what others have to say.
Zach,
I think
what do you have to say?
those prompts are really good, Matt, and it shows the multidisciplinary nature of this within the business that we're in. One of the things that I have seen, I've run those same domain lookup tests, and one of the things that people aren't talking about a lot, unless you're in these communities, is that these types of models can hallucinate. But their job is to guess the next most logical word based on everything they've been trained on. So if the next most logical word is to guess a website, they'll guess it. And it's going to be tiny offshoots because most of the time they're spot on. But you can be having my platforms manager is the guy investigating this, really hands-on. So he uses it for everything in his private life as well. And he was like, he was late for a meeting. His wife was going to a book club and she was like, oh my God, I haven't read the chapter. And he was like, let me ask what happens in ChatGPT. It invented a character in the story because it was a logical name that would pop out and it was a logical series of events. 5 bullet points in the chapter correct, bullet point 6 completely made up. So there's an element here of like, we need to still have those QA rituals in place and to be checking against our own first party and zero party data sets, because as people race into these new tools, into the great unknown, they might be mixing in, seeded incorrect, like or unmatched stuff. You ask it on the Monday, you get an answer on the Wednesday. That sort of thing.
Anything to add, Zach?
I think it really comes down to execution, right? It was great to hear Matt give some examples of how he's seen customers use AI. In our business, we do have a data science team and we're constantly looking at what's the next most relevant content if someone was reading an article on our site. Thank you for the compliment on the sites, Charlie. I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, it reminds me of predictive analytics and any of these other buzzwords, and anything that you're putting in front of customers from our side, it's got to produce results. And so it's on us as a provider to say, here's how AI or this solution or new shiny object, if we'll call it, is going to help you convert better leads or engage with the audience better. And so if you can't prove that, it really is just another thing that is a fad. And so I'm hoping that to hear more examples of how we're using it in marketing. We do use it, like I said, to do a lot of content matching, but I'm interested to hear how marketers are using it in their nurture cadences, their follow-up sequences for their SDRs. That will be really where we see the lift in ROI, I believe.
So it seems like in parsing through everybody's been talking about, if you wake up tomorrow and try to ask AI to go bring you revenue, it probably will not be successful in doing that, right? Please go, everything's soup and nuts, go sell me stuff and come back with the money. However, if you identify specific, particularly manual tasks, it's kind of like shifting from sifting through an old school card catalog to using Google, right? There's some things like that where, identifying domains, transcreation of content, some of those things, it's an easier way to do it. It still requires some human monitoring and perhaps cleaning and that sort of thing. But I definitely think there's opportunities for all of us in the different companies we're in to be testing out how certain processes and tasks and things can be more efficient using some of these AI tools, and their capabilities will go over time, they'll grow. One fun example I heard the other day was, I think it was the latest version of ChatGPT was asked to predict the results of the NCAA basketball tournament. And it did an interesting job trying to use all the data and inputs it could find to predict outcomes. However, it's those nuances it misses. For example, it used past performance to predict future results. The problem is some of the past performance are with players that don't play at those schools anymore. Michael Jordan's not at North Carolina, so that doesn't really relate to what's going to happen in the future. And so I think it's a cautionary tale to the earlier point, which is, it's doing a very good job of showing extreme confidence in what it's saying, but that's intentional. But sometimes it hides the little wrinkles in there, and so it's important, I think, for us to test methodically and identify what are some of the human things that could be done through AI to help really open up those time and resources of those people to do more strategic things. And I think that's where we're going to start to see massive efficiencies. I've been playing around with AI-based content creation, having an avatar do a demo video for you, and just, some of those things that might, lower the cost of entry. And, I'm a small business guy, right? And so finding ways to look and be able to compete with the largest companies with less resources is really compelling. Bob, do we have a poll results to go through? Oh, looks like you're on mute, Bob.
Thank you. All right, can you see the results?
Wow. Okay.
So
Just getting started. Yes.
early on, but getting there. I mean, a lot of people they're already getting their feet wet for sure.
We're seeing a living, breathing hype cycle play out. It's very, very interesting, but it's actually not the first wave of this one. I feel like,
Yeah.
again, a few years ago, I think my barbecue grill had Watson. I like to make fun of that, but it just feels like everyone's latching on, and the question is going to be, okay, in what way is AI powering this? What is the application? I abide by the idea that everything is going to have AI in some way. It's just a matter of how does it present itself and what does it do for that particular application. Shifting the conversation a little bit, I'm curious to ask this group about ABM or ABX, whatever term you want to use, account-based marketing. Coming into this year, I was kind of surprised at some of the shifts I was seeing, where it felt like there's almost two camps forming. Those that were going further into ABM and those that are kind of backing away. I'm curious to see what this group has to say. And there's another poll question being put up there about for the audience, what ABM practices you're prioritizing right now. But I'd love to hear this group kind of talk about what you're seeing in the ABM landscape, which is certainly not in a new hype cycle, but is here to stay in one way or another. But it seems to be at a bit of a perhaps a pivot point for some companies. So anybody want to start?
I'm happy to jump in and start on this one. So currently, I would say 80% of all of the marketing programs we're running involve some sort of target account list. So that's definitely one of the trends that have continued to grow and is a staple in what they're doing. I think a lot of marketers have seen really good success with ABM and being targeted and personalized messaging. ABX is a whole next level. Instead of thousands of accounts, we're trying to reach 30 accounts, which has been a really great exercise we've seen and helped our customers with. One of the things that I'm seeing, though, where there's this pivot point is we're getting a lot of customers coming to us asking for intent or BANT or multi-touch or whatever it is on top of their target account list. And what's really interesting for us is I'm able to look at their target account list and show them which of those accounts are actively researching these topics or solutions within our ecosystem. And oftentimes they don't match. And so really where you can sort of shoot yourself in the foot is, what is the goal of what you're trying to accomplish? And can you work with your publisher to understand how do I prioritize these accounts? Or are there opportunities to go outside of this account list when it makes sense to do so, because there's a higher intent person or a higher intent engagement that you could accomplish by doing so? I feel like the marketers are coming to us saying, well, in order to get in front of this perfect account that is going to convert higher, I need you to call them and ask them 5 questions and do this account list and layer on intent. When the reality is they're trying to solve for the difference in supply and demand. There's only so many companies who are actively researching security topics or BI solutions. How do I find those companies and do as little work to engage with them as possible, because my cost is going to be cheaper, my acquisition costs will be lower, and I'm going to have a higher quality engaged conversation with that member of the team or that buying committee. They may or may not be on your account list. And so that's where I feel like we're seeing this shift from everything's ABM to how do I get smarter about accomplishing the same goal that ABM used to accomplish for me maybe 2 years ago.
That's a really interesting point, Zach. I think budget efficiency, especially again referencing the macro and some of the pressures that high investment tech firms might be under. I think people are trying to be careful with how they spend, but they're using old paradigms of how they would more efficiently use their budget with a newer methodology that they want to prescribe to, which is account-based marketing. So our VP of strategy, Jen, who's been around the industry and is a sort of luminary for us, she's taught us loads, has been reminding us about the benefit of account velocity, right? You want to find a company and bring it closer to you as soon as you can. And you want to move that company from not quite ready or beginning its research journey to a buyer if it's one of those companies that you believe is the best fit for you and that you can drive the most results for. But that's not necessarily who's already in that research journey. So there's an element here of that Venn diagram overlap, you're right, is slim already. But I've also seen some media buying tactics, and Kevin, you can correct me on this, but there are media buying tactics that have been tried and true in the past for our industry. Like, I only want so many net new names per company, because then I can cover more companies. So I can make my budget go further. If I have 2 people per company, 3 people per company as a cap, then that's something that happens to, I'm sure, all of our campaign delivery teams, right? But if I want to bring a company closer to me sooner, and I need to engage more people at that buying community, and I need to create an account-based experience, then I need more people caring about me more often. But those 2 things, in my view, this is a Ross opinion, not an Inbox Insight opinion, but are mutually exclusive, right? If you're spreading yourself thin, or you're putting in dollops of time and attention, you can't always run those side by side without being really thoughtful about how, who matters most to me, how do I prioritize, and again, for me, it comes back to justification of value. So what we'd like to see is a sort of alignment with the customer around, is your strategy serving you, and what information can we give you to make it more beneficial to you throughout the term of this program?
Yeah, this is where you can get into the house of cards, right? I mean, all of these cause and effect going the wrong way in terms of ABM, right? This is where intent fails, right? This is where ABM account selection fails. From the intent side, it's like, one of the good uses of AI is to have a client give you what they perceive as important keywords and get back to them and show them exactly what's important and not the keywords that they think. And that's based on the NLP that Ross talks about, some of the things that Zach talked about. They're all relevant. Do I even know what people are doing? What is their behavior in order to get there? A lot of clients sell things, but people who are trying to buy things are trying to solve problems, and they're not necessarily researching things, right? They're looking at concepts. They're not necessarily saying, oh, I need servers. They need servers, but it doesn't mean they're researching them. So right off the bat, you kind of like have to take a step back, and that's where intent fails. It's oversimplified. Secondly, to the point that Zach and Ross made, there are multiple audiences that you have to reach, and there are concentric circles of influence that you have to create. That's not a buying team, right? A buying team, people are making decisions. How many are there people, 5 or 12 or whatever? There might be 100 people inside of an account that you want to influence. And you need to take that into account. And you need to also realize that the people who go to Zach's properties and the same company, other people who are important are not going there, because they're practitioners, meaning that they're looking for answers to help them do a better job of using stuff. And they have influence as well. So you've got multiple audiences inside. You have to basically monitor for those multiple using NLP and other ways of understanding the variety of content, the context, right? And this is where intent fails miserably. Most intent vendors count words. They're not really doing their job. They're counting words. They're going, oh, it doesn't matter whether it's a press release or it's in The Economist or it's in Slashdot. There's that word, and that really ticks me off, because we can be so much better. Again, let's get better at this stuff. So, from an ABM perspective, why is the ABM list the list when only 5 to 10% of them are in market? So one thing that I would recommend to folks that are trying to buy ABM solutions is set yourselves up with an A/B test, right? Here's your list. Now let people like Zach or Ross or Matt or anybody come back and say, let's do an A/B test. Here's your list, and here's what we suppress that list, and then here's this list. We just multiplied your list by 2 or 3 times, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
if you're on the call and you're looking for solutions, you talk to guys like Ross or Zach or Matt, ask about an A/B test, and they'll be happy to do that for you, and that will get you much better. That, first of all, that's a great way to have a relationship with the sell side, right? Work with them and collaborate. And then, think about things like an A/B test. I mean, you've heard some great stuff. Ross has go to Ross and say, Ross, I want to do an A/B test. Here's my list. Now, he's going to I'm telling you right now, he's going to outperform it. I'm sorry to put the pressure on you, Ross. I know you're not getting too much sleep and you're drinking too much, but this is good.
That was true before. We can still hit your goals, don't worry.
But yeah, that's the thing about ABM is that there's so much more. Again, what's the t-shirt here? Let's improve things. Let's not go to the next hype cycle. Let's just improve these things. So many things that we have that we're not using.
I forgot the golden rule of doing webinars or podcasts is have a t-shirt website ready with slogans and things that come up and have them available to buy on demand. Next time, Bob. I'd like to weave in a question from the audience. I think it's relevant right now. When we talk about ABM, any vendor or guru or anybody that talks about ABM will tell you that to do it successfully requires alignment or at least collaboration between marketing and sales. Where do we think our industry is at in terms of, successfully having marketing and sales align in ABM efforts? If you had to give it a grade, is it a B, a C? Where do we think we're actually at there? I'd love to just get people's take on that.
Depends on the customer.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Depends on the client.
Some customers are coming to us and they're marketers. Most of our customers are marketers saying, here's a list that our sales team, put together. And again, the question I'm always asking our sales reps to ask our customers is, where did this list come from? Why are these your priority accounts? And understanding, are these the only accounts you can work with? Are these the accounts the salesperson asked you to work with? Did you put them together? Did these come from Zoom Info? Did they come from 6 Sense? And it's really not about where it comes from. It's about understanding why it came from there and what the goal is for putting together the list. So anytime you're building a list, I don't know that we're doing a good enough job holistically. I'm talking about the tech marketing community of just asking why these accounts. And so I try to ask why a couple of times, and you eventually get to, well, I want to be able to have the most meaningful, personalized conversations with these accounts to get into them, because I know they're a good fit if I could win. And so now let's say, well, what if there's another account who is willing to buy your solution tomorrow, and I can give you all that insight? Would you want to talk to them too? 99% of the time, the answer is yes. Well, then let's build your list differently. So it's all about asking why. I don't know that there's a flat answer A, B, C that we can apply holistically to the industry. Some are more advanced than others.
Yeah, just to jump onto the back of that, we have seen sort of the quality of lists we are being provided have improved, I would say, over the past year or so around ABM. We're seeing a lot more lists around sort of cross-sell and upsell. We're seeing more lists coming from 6 Sense. We're seeing less lists coming from the FTSE 500 or the NASDAQ or the largest companies in the US by revenue. So there is a lot more intelligence going into it, but sort of going back to the points that you guys were making earlier, especially on ABM, on qualified campaigns, running a qualified campaign on an ABM list, having the ability to identify the ICP and be able to run an A/B test, just like Charlie said, would be a great way to, adopt a more thorough ABM strategy for the future.
And to lengthen its tenure. Like, if you know that those,
right.
One of the things that I find with sales and marketing alignment is it drifts in and out of like it's the heartbeat of any organization, but it comes and goes. Like, if you're all really concentrated on it for the first quarter of the year, but then you don't refresh your list, you don't really know where to go next with it, your results diminish, and then everybody thinks it's not working, so they put less effort in. Or you may have, a high rate of BDR or SDR outreach in some territories where you have more boots on the ground and not others, but there's great fit opportunities for you there that you're not covering. So I think Zach's right. Like, if you're inside that decision-making process with the customer, and you can understand why, you can give better guidance, and you can understand where they've where they've had trouble before. Matt, I share your sentiment that the quality of the stuff we get through is better. We receive it, and I think, Zach, you said earlier 90%. We still receive around about 60% of the campaigns we run are a provided ABM list, and 40% are not. But we still make one, if that makes sense, because of if you're running a process through, ideally we're going to overlay intent anyway. Ideally, we want some understanding of what good fit accounts look like for that customer, so that we can look alike them. So there's an element of this where there's so much intelligence available now, and there's so much knowledge around, especially if you're running a North America campaign, there is so much available data. It's really about prioritization rather than being able to find the right companies to go after. So these tools are so readily available. How do we best apply them anyway? Like without a target account list, we should be using them ourselves.
Absolutely. Bob, did you have a poll results to pull up?
Do have poll results, and what's interesting is that prioritization, collaboration with sales is number one, right? So it's a big thing for everybody, whether they're doing it right or not. They know it's.
Well, it sounds like we're hearing, though, I was sensing a lot of it's improving in the conversations that we just had, which is good. I know it's been certainly a pain point I've experienced, and again, it depends on the client, but I think that I'm getting a sense that through trial and error in some cases, and sometimes some pain, organizations are learning how to actually have sales and marketing be aimed more towards common goals and to be measured in a more cohesive way, and even find ways to better collaborate and have processes where I think in the past it was very much a baton handoff or a silo, or checking the box that my team did our job. And as we know, that's what has caused a lot of companies that maybe didn't have success with initial ABM efforts. That may be why, is that they weren't really working in the proper spirit. And if they're coming around to version 2 or version 3 of those efforts, perhaps figuring out better ways to do it and then plugging in the tool, as opposed to buying the tool and then figuring out how to plug it into the existing organization. In the few minutes we have left, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the future and what's coming. And I think in particular around, ABM or just overall lead gen with the shifts we're seeing in terms of the loss of cookies and some of the, I guess, more traditional tracking methods and sort of the digital landscape. How do we see these changes affecting our businesses? And there's another poll question up about that. But in terms of just the shifts in data sovereignty, data privacy, et cetera, how do you think that might impact your businesses, and how you might have to evolve to continue to meet your customers' needs, which is, with digital natives, they're looking for obviously a more frictionless experience, but sharing as little data as possible. What does that mean for your businesses? Anyone want to start? I know you have an opinion, Charlie.
I don't have an opinion about anything, really. Look, there's sort of like it's like an Alfred Hitchcock movie, right? The MacGuffin. It's like, the Falcon was just a symbol as you got through the plot. This cookieless thing is the same thing. It's a MacGuffin. All it's doing is it's concentrating the power of the big guys to have identity and to wipe out all the little guys. Now, third-party cookies are far from perfect. In fact, they're majority imperfect. But they did serve a purpose, and their shelf life went on way too long. There's going to be identity graphs. There's going to be identity. It's just going to be housed inside the big guys. It's going to be Amazon and Google and Facebook and so on and so forth. So, you continue to have coverage. In the B2B world, I think we really looking at legitimate interest and respect for privacy and PII with all of the coming legislation, not just GDPR and CCPA, but everything, you'll still have the ability to do what you're looking for. You're going to find your audience. If you have something to say and you're not trying to sell something all the time, you're going to find your audience. And, the better your content and the better you use things like intent and IP resolution and things like that, you're going to be fine. Even though GDPR claims that, IP addresses are personal, there hasn't been a lot to talk about there because it's kind of ridiculous, not for the consumer, but for the B2B world. Legitimate interest is an important part of our world. We're not talking consumer, we're talking us as B2B marketers. So I think that there's going to be plenty of tools, there's going to be plenty of data. We're all going to be fine. This is not the end of the world. The third-party cookie is fairly limited, in terms of what it does. It's not very flexible. It's not very extensible. So unfortunately, the big guys are going to get to play, and we're going to have to play by their rules, but we'll still have the ability to remember what we're doing as B2B marketers. We're not looking for the lone wolf. We're looking for groups of people that aggregate. So in an aggregated world, we're not going to lose as much as, say, a consumer marketplace does, So, again, everyone wants to scare you, but the lights aren't going to get turned off. People are still going to need, lead generation and things. So we will continue. We march on.
Very positive sentiment. Any other thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Wes. I don't want to directly contradict you, but I think it's going to get bad. And I think the reason it's going to get bad is customers' expectations of having that justification of having all of this data points to prove the validity of their targeting and cover themselves for why did I spend on this and am I reaching the right audience, is that there's these, I see both inflated demands for resolution around who the individual is and a 360 view of, okay, I'm going to generate you an HQL and I'm going to tell you their entire journey history and I'm going to tell you all the stuff, which if you get the chemistry right, it's possible, but also increasing compliance demands from people inside their organization not to have any of that stuff. So there's a real sort of, I think it's going to come to a head with elements of cookieless and elements of the B2B marketing stack, where these stacks already are integrated and talk to each other a lot, but then you have big walled gardens like LinkedIn or like other environments where really they have full resolution, but they don't provide it to the end customer because they want them to buy licenses and stay subscribed, right? And to use it through their pathway. So I think with looking at, the different types of signal that you can have against an individual across the digital ad stack, you've got an email address, a hash of that email address, you've got a mobile device ID, you've got an IP address, you've got some other dodgy fingerprint of guesswork that's got some decent resolution around it. What we like to do is hit all of that through a framework of consent. So as long as we know that we have at some point stamped a certain element of opt-in, then any resolution beyond that point, you can group those signals together. Up until that point, with anonymized marketing and group marketing, like Charlie's saying, IP is your friend, but not to be entirely trusted, because I don't want to reach anybody that works at Amazon if they're driving a van. I want to reach the person that's interested in their hyperconverged storage. So there's some elements here where I think cookieless hits the customer harder than us, because I think third-party cookies and IP targeting that you can buy through your software as a service stack feels tangible. I can can put this thing in my stack and I can spend all day there and I can insource, but they don't have as much of a reason to solve these problems as we do as publishers. So there's an element there where the customer is going to be rolling uphill with this, and they might need people who's are dedicating time to solving that environment.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like, if I can start to summarize this whole conversation, a couple minutes we have left, is we need to focus on the fundamentals. And there's no magic solution to these challenges, which is do this, do that, do AI. What we're all kind of describing is having proper process, proper thinking and strategy behind the things that we're doing, how we use different services and tools, how we analyze data, test and learn, do A/B testing. I think that's a good message for everybody, which is, think about this from the ground up and what makes the most sense and how can you gather data to prove what you're doing is working to get more investment. I think that's going to be key right now, is showing the business that your investments are succeeding, that they're showing traction. And the more you can do that in a non-mysterious way, the better off you're going to be. I know there was some questions we won't get to about maybe specific questions on capabilities or one touch versus two touch lead gen, things like that. I would encourage our audience to reach out to the folks on this call as follow-up and maybe investigate some of their capabilities or some of the research they may have. I know they're happy to do that. That's what they love to do. But I think it's, overall just a positive sentiment from this group that if you're focused on fundamentals of good marketing, of good B2B marketing, you're on the right track. And then just think about the different tools we have to deploy to make that possible. I'll turn it over to you, Bob, if there are any final poll results or thoughts to share before we wrap up.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Final poll results, mix between what Ross thinks and what Charlie thinks. So, and what cookies going away, I haven't seen it yet. They've been talking about that for a long time. there's fear out there, but not as great as you would think. It's, it's, a quarter of the group. So
Mhm.
not too terrible. I'm happy to share contact information with the attendees. Happy to get feedback from you too. I heard one thing, one nice feedback was see if we can enable chat between you. And so I'll see if I can do that for next time.
All right. Well, I certainly want to thank everybody for participating. Again, the representation from Account Media, Inbox Insight, Demand Science, and Technology Advice. Go find these guys. I know they love to help customers share ideas, share research, and they'll be happy to help you. And definitely appreciate all of the audience attending today. And look forward to hopefully carrying on some conversations separately as well.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kevin. Lovely to see you both.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Bye.
Till next time.
Bye.